In this video, I'm going to be philosophizing on dutifulness concerning the personality characteristics constituted from the overarching subcomponents carefulness, decadence, and or deservingness, undeservingness, and or courageousness, cowardness, constituting what is meaningful to engage more moralistic and or ethical conducts strictly more unique to optimizing more workplace ethical and or moral conducts and or within civil healthy psychological functioning relationships, not necessarily uniquely one's more moralistic authenticities that is more related to openness to exploration, meaning dutifulness is most concerned with ethics, not necessarily one's unique morality, with the exception that individuals whom are lower in openness to exploration are more likely to hold more meaningful similarities to individuals they are around, with more homogeneity in terms of moralisms, increasing certain expectations with what constitutes norms and or mores that are meaningful for moderate dutifulness and or influencing perceptions of mostly deservingness and or undeservingness, be it the appropriateness in terms of one's treatment and or engaging the appropriate conduct that is deserving of X in terms of a punishment and or benefit to a benefactor and or a defector, is more likely to be influenced in individuals whom are lower in openness to exploration by more cues within civil relationships around them, engaging more the meaningful similarities within meaningful similar individuals whom one appropriates more ethical conducts, shaping and forming one's moralistic perceptions. Carefulness, decadence concerns not uniquely one's careful thinking and or considerations, yet more deliberate, careful conducts one may execute in terms of solving and or completing self-tasks within a desired direction of meaningful effect. Compared to courageousness, cowardice, not to confuse courageousness per se with boldness and or callousness, distinct in terms of one's moral intuition and or ethical navigations, as individuals who are courageous are willful in terms of their pursuits to engage more ethical conducts with the will to tolerate and or endure pushback from others, be it an individual is more likely to hold more unique perspectives, more unique to individuals who are higher in openness to explorations, yet individuals who may be moderate in terms of openness to exploration, yet who may be more competent, may engage more courageous conducts, domain specific in terms of solving certain problems that they may be more qualified and or competent in solving, and or therefore more willful to tolerate and or endure individuals who may dislike and or provide criticism in terms of one's conducts, who may lack the appropriate self-knowledge and or self-awareness, engaging more situated courageousness, not necessarily the higher end of the continuum in terms of courageousness. Compared to individuals whom are engaging cowardice, these are the individuals whom will often communicate to you in private they are going to do X just to prove X wrong, and or they should have done X and next time they're most certainly going to do X. They don't care what others tell them, and yet they never do, and or within even the next experiential encounter, you learn that they were too scared and were panicking in terms of engaging the conduct. This is more related to cowardice, not necessarily courageousness. Be it that dutifulness engages what is more correct in terms of ethical solutions to problems compassionately, and or may in some cases be more dispassionate in terms of one's own unique feelings and or thinkings in favor for one's evidence-based problem solving with the most practical solutions to remediate problems most optimally, most related to an individual's competence to solve complex problems that are more likely to be associated not uniquely to moral and or ethical issues. However, most ethical issues are directly and or indirectly related to hazards, and it's hazards that tend to be the most concerned in terms of dutifulness, preventing and or mitigating threats associated with hazards, and or identifying them in the workplace, and or solving them, and or increasing prevention measures from certain threats, harm, and or injury associated with certain hazards. Not uniquely physical hazards per se, yet psychological hazards that may be a result of certain extreme sensory exposure, loud noises, bright lights, certain repugnant and or distasteful scents that may be providing certain negative affect cues to engage navigational wisdom to avoid threats and or pathogens within airborne particles that may be ingested, and or as a result from the toxins be the causations of various psychopathological illnesses, including fatigue and or other symptoms that the symptoms themselves may pose a threat to individuals who may be engaging in certain tasks, and or therefore mitigate the intercategorical and or intracategorical effectivenesses and or efficiencies within one's work that may result in more likely injury from certain psychoactive effects of pathogens, including fatigue and or dizziness that may influence an individual's direct perception navigations and or increase cognitive fog, negatively impacting an individual's problem solving and or solution seeking to complex problems. An individual may need to take some time off work to recuperate their health and or engage more appropriate, meaningful treatment of the underlying issues to engage more safe workplace conducts. Yet, the most concerning hazards in terms of what is the most probabilistic harmful risks to not just others around one, yet the often reputation of businesses is the hazards of certain scoundrels who are the troublemakers, whom are engaging more recklessness, whom are lower in dutifulness, whom are more likely to also be negligent, yet there's a meaningful distinction within negligence and or recklessness. Recklessness being most associated with dangerousness and or the willful harms that an individual is most responsible for, failing to engage meaningful precautionate conducts and or engage the appropriate calibrated congruent treatments of what's appropriate, often engaging in more inappropriate and inappropriateness within the undeservingness of certain conducts others perceive incivilities within, and or are more likely to engage in cowardice in terms of averting what is the appropriate punishment and or prevention to mitigate certain dangerous misconducts from harming other individuals, whom are more likely to manipulate and or lie and or cheat, whom are mostly low in terms of not uniquely dutifulness per se, yet work ethic more holistically in terms of more manipulative and or deceitful misconducts compared to engaging in more decadence in terms of the inappropriate, grandiose attempts to solve problems harmfully, not necessarily engaging the careful deliberations, yet the often onerous attempts to coerce solutions, resulting in counterproductive and or dangerous resultants that are harmful to others, constituting the decadence, not the carefulness per se, that is more of a hazard to individuals around one. Engaging often abnormalities within the executive functioning that is associated with the evaluations of